The Cavs are 12-0 going for 13-0, which means we had to hop on here, do a little behind the glass for you guys to get you ready for tonight's game against the Philadelphia 76ers. Fill you guys in on everything else that's happening in the UCSS world. Mikey McNuggets joined by Earl the Pearl. We got Anthony Antonelli here behind the glass for a Wednesday edition of Behind the Glass. What's up, guys?
How you feel, man?
How could you not feel great when your Cavs are 12-0, right?
My first thought this morning was, how can we get to win number 13? Because before yesterday, like, you made me buy into this whole, let's keep this thing rolling. I had this attitude of, like, all right, if we lose a game, we lose a game. It's the NBA. Any given night, you can get got. I mean, you look at the Chicago game, we was, 8-point favorites going into that game? Yep. And they was scrappy. But then after conversation with you, like the producer, the content creator, the host in me, it was like, nah, run this thing up. Yeah. We need to be undefeated going into Boston. Like, that's great for content.
And 12-0 has Cav fever swept over into Parma as well.
Oh, yeah. I went out last night, actually, to Lakewood and was hanging out in Mahal's. I saw so much Cavs gear, and that's usually not a place you see a lot of sports gear. So it's the hype is real and the hype is here. It's back to 2016.
You want to find Ant out and about, just go to Mahal's. I feel like that kid lives at Mahal's half his time.
Yeah.
And I know he's moving into a new apartment soon, but I got to imagine he's paying like 85% of his rent to his landlord and then 15% of his rent to Mahal's.
Fun fact, my new apartments are owned by Crocker Park. So,
random question or random fact. This made me think about you because, you know, Ant kicks it a lot. The audience don't know. This man, he's a partier. Did you know, like, Creed and Three Doors Down was doing a joint concert in Cleveland, November 29th?
I actually did not know that. I'm surprised I'm not going.
Yeah, you know about you've seen more concerts in the last 3 months than Earl and I have seen in our lives combined.
It helps when my friends work at every venue in the city and I never have to pay for a ticket. I couldn't tell you the last time I paid for a show.
Oh man, I got fancy tickets.
I go to Cavs games
use the Game Time app.
Hey.
Use promo code LOCKEDON NFL. Free tickets, $20 off.
When I don't get free tickets, I do use Game Time, unironically.
What the hell are we paying Anthony and Dustin that they just walk around talking about the type of hookups and tickets that they got?
It's just people I know from college. That
yeah,
one I got lucky
whatever.
with.
Whatever. Steve, we get robbed over here.
Yeah. Well, if Ant wants to hook us up with tickets to the Cavs game on Friday or Sunday, I'll gladly take that hookup. But let's talk about those Cavs. 12-0. They have a chance tonight to become the 6th team ever to start a season 13-0. Earl, you mentioned earlier in terms of just from a content thinking perspective, how important it is for this win streak to continue. But they are at a bit of a crossroads because they've played 12 games in 20 days. Tonight will be 13 games in 22 days, the most of any team in basketball. Jared Allen's dealing with a lower leg strain. He's questionable. They still don't have Max Strus. We've talked about the depth at length. But you can see some of these guys are starting to get tired legs. It's just kind of been a gauntlet out the box. How hard should the Cavs push it to keep this win streak going, to chase history? 24 wins to start a season is the record set by Golden State back in 15-16, as opposed to kind of playing it smart with some long, big picture goals in mind at the same time. Where's that delicate balance and how Kenny Atkinson and the staff should handle it?
I think that's a good question. I think Donovan spoke about that after the game versus Chicago, to where, you know, this is tough. This is not easy what they're doing. And I think, honestly, man, they're putting forth a lot of, like mental toughness, you know, because you mentioned the amount of games played in a such short period amount of time. I think, Mike, honestly, bro, this is what builds character later on in the season, right? And he spoke to that fact. Yeah, this is tough, and no, if you lose a game, it's not the biggest deal. But this mentality of being focused and locked in on winning, that means, like, they are clearly chasing the championship. They are clearly thinking big picture. And they'd rather go through this gauntlet and go through everything that comes with this gauntlet now so that they can be, like, battle-tested, so that they can be prepared and ready to go come playoff time. Because come playoff time, everybody's legs is going to be tired. Everybody's going to be dealing with some sort of injury. And if you've already been through the fire, been through the storm, and to me, it makes you war ready. It makes you built and equipped and ready to go for everything that you're going to face going forward. Yeah, it's a lot of injuries there, man, but this team is scrappy, and they pick each other up. You go back to the Chicago game, for me, I seen careless turnovers. I seen missed open three-point shots that they hadn't been missing. I seen a lot of missed free throws that hadn't been the case before. And yet they still found a way to win that game. And so to me, that's that mental toughness. That's that championship mentality that they've bought into. And I think that's why they're having that success, and I think it's important to stay locked in like that.
And where do you fall on the balance of chasing history but also kind of playing it smart?
I think you go for it all. It's a competition. These are competitive people. Why not? Now, obviously, you do have to be smart with the rest. Like, there's going to be a game where Donovan doesn't play and Darius doesn't play and Jared doesn't play. I think the bench can step up, though. It's not like last year when if our starters aren't playing, we got nothing. Keep going. Like, I would fight for every single win until I won the championship, honestly.
I've kind of had a change of opinion on this over the last, 3 days. Mm-hmm. At first, I was like, you know what? It's an awesome streak and it's fun, but in the grand scheme of things, what you do in November doesn't really matter if you're not playing good basketball in April and March, right? So I was like, rest guys, don't overexert yourself. And I want to make this abundantly clear. Do not overexert anything. If Jared Allen has a lower leg strain, let him sit a game, let him rest. If Donovan or Darius or Evan or Tai Jerome or LeVert, if anyone needs a day off because their bodies aren't right, do not risk injury. That's the one thing I'm not willing to go across.
Totally agree with that.
If you look at the Eastern Conference, the Cavs are undefeated. The Celtics have 3 losses now, and then there's not a singular team over 500.
Right.
I actually think there's more value in these early season games than I ever imagined there could have been when the season started, because there's a chance that the Cavs keep playing even close to this rate. They could have the number 1 seed or a top 2 seed locked up in the Eastern Conference by damn near January. And at that point, how many meaningful games are you really going to play down the stretch? And we know how hard it is to flip the switch, especially if you're a team that's never really done that in the postseason before. If you don't have a LeBron or even a Kawhi Leonard, for example, who we've seen playoff time, lock in. I have no qualms about them in the regular season taking it off because I know come playoff time, they're going to turn it on. This Cavs team hasn't earned that right. Mm-hmm. Kenny Atkinson, who's done everything right this season, has no postseason success as a head coach. He has it as an assistant coach, but not as a head coach. So he's still unproven in that category. So while you're in this 12-game win streak currently, use these games as almost once again, don't overexert yourself, injure. It's not worth risking a long-term injury. By any means, I'm not saying that. But this isn't just a regular Wednesday night November game. Like, there's actual stakes at play here, and you can't manufacture or fake that later in the season if in March you're 17 games up on the 3 seed, and then you're just playing meaningless basketball for the last 60 days of the season. These games matter for something that has nothing to do with the playoffs, but you can't just replicate that intensity, that desire to win, that passion's not the right word, but that deliberate intention of we have something to accomplish here. So I actually was starting the season off as it's a cool streak, it's fun, it doesn't matter, to now I do think you could build some legitimate winning habits in these games, and I'm not sure you're going to get that same opportunity later in the season if they continue to play this well and the East continues to underperform.
I kind of thought that's what this season was about for the Cleveland Cavaliers. When you bring in a whole new coaching staff, you're running a whole new system, you believe that even with the new staff, the Cavs are good enough to make the playoffs as a top 4 or 5 seed, possibly make it out the first round. But you knew that this season it would be more of a microscope on it because you are learning. And so every game for the Cavaliers mattered. The thing that is so impressive is, ladies and gentlemen, there's no switch to be flipped. There's no switch to be flipped. This Cleveland Cavaliers team is legit. What you see in front of you will be sustained. This is who they are. They are a balanced attack of mass destruction. They can kill you with 10, 11 people. Every single night it can be somebody different. And that's beautiful. And when you get these regular season games that are so intense that they are playing like they matter, those are things that's going to build character later on down the season. And to your point, nobody expected the Eastern Conference to look the way that it's looking.
It's terrible. The standings are crazy right now.
It's literally Cleveland, Boston, and everybody else. The top 2 seeds in the Eastern Conference will and probably should be locked up by the All-Star break at the latest. You know where you're going to be at. And I think for Kenny Atkinson, you look at that very small lineup he deployed against Chicago. You're going to see tinkerings like that. You're going to see things that's tweaks like that all throughout the season. And so as they go throughout this regular season, as they rack up wins and separate themselves from the pack, they're learning how to be a winning basketball team that plays the right way all at the same time.
And we haven't had Earl on the panel in a while.
It's been a long time.
But we have to give him, and I want you to do a slow zoom on Earl as he's doing this take. Yeah, so slide over. But let's give Earl a minute on Tai Jerome. Earl, you called this from last year, and now here's your chance to take an early season victory lap. And Ant, As soon as he starts talking, yep, I got thumbs up. Earl, the floor is yours.
Yeah, so I just want to thank Tai Jerome for making me look like I know what the hell I'm talking about first and foremost. When the Cleveland Cavaliers signed Tai Jerome 2 years ago, I honest to God thought it was an underrated signing. I know people thought me laughing and joking about it, that I was just trying to make fun. But to see him come in here against the Cavaliers when he was a member of the Golden State Warriors and drop 20 on that squad, it made me think twice about, the Cavaliers acquiring him. And then when they made that move, this basketball expert right here, he hit me on to the things that Tai Jerome was capable of. Last year, Mike, what did the Cavs lack? A backup point guard, right? We lacked a guard that had size. We lacked a guard that can create for other people.
Who could shoot. That was the big thing.
And who can shoot. And so you get a guard in here that's 6'4", 6'5", that can defend, that can facilitate, that can shoot, that's aggressive. It allows you to play Darius and Spider off guard. And then when you have Karras playing the way he playing, it gives you a fourth guard that you can deploy, and it pretty much puts you at an advantage over most teams. To me, when you look at Tai Jerome, he might be the most impactful player in the NBA right now. If you look at his plus minus, if you look at the energy of the other players when he's on the court, if you just look at the intensity level, right? When your head coach is going to you and you're not even a sixth man, and he can trust you to be a spark that this team need at said time, like, it don't get no better than that. So shout out to my boy Tai Jerome. Tai Jerome!
Shout out to Ant for the slow zooming in and out. Ant, that was flawless. If you want a deeper dive on Tai Jerome in terms of like some of the defensive stuff, Jason and I on the Ultimate Cavs Show, we did a whole segment on Tai Jerome yesterday because he's been incredible. But I want to repeat one of the things I said on the Ultimate Cavs Show last night in case you missed it and are hearing it here. Tai Jerome is having one of the most efficient seasons in recent NBA history. Per 36, which just takes your per minute stats and then multiplies it by 36 minutes. So you can get a fair comparison of how impactful a player is in the same minutes as opposed to a Jokic or a Luka or someone who plays 3 minutes, right? He's averaging 22.5, 7.5 assists, 5 rebounds, and 3.5 steals per 36 minutes. 36 minutes is on the high end of what a starter typically plays in the NBA, but it's not crazy minutes.
Right.
Now, with Tai Jerome, if he played 36 minutes average those, we have no idea to know. He might be a guy who's better in shorter spurts. But the fact that you have a guy off the bench who's capable in that per 36 category of going 22.5, 7.5, 5, and 3.5 steals, it's incredible. Per 36 throughout his career, before this year, his highest steals were 1.5. Mm-hmm. He's doubled that. His highest points were 14. He's almost doubled that. His assists, 2 higher than ever. He's having the most efficient, best season of his career. Defensively, he's been a menace. And he reminds me so much of David Fry. Now, do you remember when the Major League Baseball season started? We had Bull sitting up here. And on opening day, David Fry's in the starting lineup. And Bull's like, what are you doing, Stephen Vogt? How could you put David Fry in the starting lineup? And then you fast forward 3 months, and David Fry had a higher OPS 70 games into the season than Shohei Ohtani and Aaron Judge. And we all said, we know it's not sustainable forever. Mm-hmm. But right now, David Fry can do no wrong, right? He was hitting, anytime a lefty was pitching, mashing. He was hitting righties for the first time in his career. He was playing a solid catcher and a solid outfield. And for part of the season, David Fry was arguably in the top 3 of the most important hitters on the Guardians lineup. Hell, he was so good he made the All-Star team.
Facts.
A player to be named later in a trade turned into an All-Star. And then he fizzled off down the stretch, and he returned to what we were expecting from David Fry. But then come playoff time, he hits the monster home runs. Now, if you look at the traditional numbers, Tai Jerome is shooting better from the field than LeBron James and shooting better from 3 than Steph Curry. Is that sustainable?
Nah.
Probably not. For his career, he's a 34% three-point percent shooter. He's shooting 54% right now. For his career, he's a 43% field goal shooter. He's shooting 61% right now. Every statistic, average, common sense thread you have in your mind says he's going to revert closer to the average than where he is now, but find somewhere in the middle. And if you find somewhere in the middle, you still have a damn good bench player. But right now, just like David Fry in the first 2 months of the MLB season, Tai Jerome could do no wrong for the Cleveland Cavaliers. And I don't expect this to continue all season long, but I do fully expect Tai Jerome to be a legitimate contributor in the Cavs playoff rotation. And there are going to be times, whether it be foul trouble, injuries, guys just having off shooting nights, where Kenny Atkinson's going to have to rely on Tai Jerome, just like Stephen Vogt had to rely on David Fry to be his cleanup hitter. And I didn't think I'd have any trust in that before the season started. And now I feel pretty darn good about that particular situation when it comes to fruition for the Cavs. Tai Jerome is the David Fry of the NBA.
Let me ask you a question. I know he won a championship in Virginia. Was he named most outstanding player while he was in college?
I think Kyle Guy was named the most outstanding player, but I'll look that up.
All right, so he spent time in Golden State with Steve Kerr, at one point with Kenny Atkinson, and of course being the backup point guard to Steph Curry. Maybe we are underestimating his ceiling, or maybe we are trying to put a cap on what his ceiling can be.
He was not the most outstanding player.
Okay, but he's still a young man that is
27 years old.
That's developing, and you starting to see him really come into his own. And I think anytime that you spend time in a Warrior system, like, you learn things that you probably don't get unless you are in those situations, right? Like those culture situations, like the San Antonio Spurs organization or the Golden State Warriors. You come away with certain intangibles that you can add, just to your career as you go about things on and off the court. And you see him developing as a player. You see him just really coming into his own. And who's to say how much he learned, by just sitting behind Steph Curry, or how much he learned in Golden State, or how hungry he is because he only played a game in a quarter last year before missing the entire season. And so I think there are a lot of factors that go into why Tai Jerome is playing the way he is playing. But I wouldn't sleep on Tai Jerome. I think this dude, if he's healthy, he can be one of the Cavs' most impactful bench players throughout the season. And if he keeps this up, man, then we got a Swiss Army knife and a secret weapon that we can deploy come playoff time that we did not have last year.
We were joking yesterday how he's taken some big-time shots in clutch situations for the Cavs. And I have to be honest, I haven't loved them in terms of what it was as a look. Like, was the shot quality great? Meh, but they keep going in. So it's hard to really be upset with that because he can't miss right now. He's playing at that high of a level. It's pretty infrequent, or pretty rare, I guess is a better way to say it, to see a guy who played 3 years in college, come into the league, bounced around, like now take the next step. Usually it happens in your first or second year in the NBA. Ty's in his sixth season. He's only played 170 games in his entire career, though. Injuries have been the main thing that's plagued him. So maybe this is coming off a season where he didn't play essentially for the last 80 games of the year. Gets that entire rest period, has a terrific offseason. Kenny Atkinson called him the MVP of their September camp, which I laughed at the time. Like, it's September training camp. Like, how you gonna name an MVP? But he clearly saw this, so this isn't just all of a sudden out of the blue. Atkinson recognized his ability and the level he was playing at during training camp, and it's translated seamlessly. Is this the best version of Tai Jerome we'll ever see? Maybe. If you had told me before the season, if he was going to shoot 61-55 from the floor, I'd say, yeah, it's by far the best. I'm not putting a ceiling on him now. I mean, I don't think he'll ever be an all-star, but, like, he's clearly established himself as a quality NBA caliber guard that any team in the league would love to have right now.
Let's keep it a buck. We really don't know how good any of these players are. I think, like, for me personally, Kenny Atkinson is surprising me. You're seeing coaching one-on-one on full display. This is a dude who's all about player development, and you see players who pretty much was on this team last year and a couple years before that, they are playing next level. G said it best, on paper, Sam Merrill is a defensive liability. But the eye test, if you watch Sam Merrill at any point throughout the season, like, he hold his own on the defensive side, and he's another guy that can be called upon off that bench that can lift the Cavs and give them a spark. You think about
George Niang went from being laughed off the court to being
shout out to the minivan.
He's
right?
in every one of their best 5 lineups in terms of, like, the net rating.
He's in there.
George Niang's in, like, 4 of the top 7. Yeah.
And so when you look at all these different players and you see how well they're playing, that's a huge testament to this coaching staff, right? And not just Kenny Atkinson, but DeMarre Carroll, right? Johnny Bryant, among others.
They brought in a whole new, and sorry to cut you off, but they brought in a brand new player development staff. Not like
and you see
head of development, his name's Alex Sarama. Alex Sarama is his name. Came over from Portland. He brought a few guys with him. And it's 12 games, but, like, the dividends so far are evident, like, crystal clear with your own 2 eyes.
You see it, and it's exciting because you haven't even got Max Strus back into the fold yet. I was on the radio last weekend, Mike, and a caller called up and asked me a question. It was the first time this season that I heard the name Imani Bates. Yeah. And the question was, did I believe that Kenny Atkinson can unlock Imani Bates and he can be a contributor on his team? And I had to sit back and I had to think about that for a second. And my answer was, I think that one day Imani Bates, under the tutelage of Kenny Atkinson, can be a staple on his team. Whether that be a role player or in the starting lineup is to be determined. But to your point, he fits everything that Kenny Atkinson wants to do in the system. He's a dude with length, he's a dude that can move, and he's a dude that can shoot. And he has just enough athleticism to be able to make a huge difference. And so there's still a lot to be learned as far as being a pro. And I think that he has the attitude, the mentality, and the will to want to be that pro. I can't say that I felt this way last year with J.B. Bickerstaff as the coach, but seeing what Kenny Atkinson has done with everybody else, I am really interested to see what he can get out of Imani Bates.
Yeah, Imani's hurt right now. He's going to have to jump over I think a few guys have passed him in terms of all right, who's the next guy to come up? Like Luke Travers, very different games. Very, very. But he almost had a triple-double with 26 points in the G League opener. And Imani's still recovering from a meniscus injury. I wouldn't expect anything from Imani this year. He's not going to be ready to even play basketball till early winter, like January, February. Then there's the whole revamp period. It's hard to integrate a guy like that in a new system, especially when you're clicking 70% into the season. And right now, who would you give him minutes over? Like, who's not playing well enough to where you would sacrifice their minutes for?
That's another thing I like about Kenny. I was at the Warriors game, and pregame he was asked about Max Strus. When Max Strus is healthy, does he automatically earn the starting job back? And Kenny pretty much said, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Yeah. The only reason that stood out is because after the game, of course, Isaac started.
I asked him, yeah.
You asked him, yeah. As a matter of fact, he was the one who asked the question. He was just like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And so that tells me everything I know about Kenny. He's not going to try to force anything because it should look a certain way on paper. He's going to play who's hot, and you're going to have to earn your spot no matter who you are. And to your point, I don't think it's going to be an opportunity there this year, but it definitely raised my eyebrows and level of intrigue of like, okay, what can next year or the year after that or even the year after that look like with him? Because you're looking at Evan Mobley now in year 4 of his career, but year 1 under Kenny Atkinson, and the Evan Mobley that we see right now,
different man.
I think not only is he a different man now, he's going to be a different man by the end of the season. And if he can carry this same consistency on throughout his career, this dude is going to be scary when it's all said and done.
Yeah, I mean, if you're asking who do I feel more confident can develop Imani Bates into a legitimate NBA player, starter or contributor, however you want to define it. Like, yeah. I mean, look at the tangible differences already we've seen. Will it happen? A lot of variables at play.
To be determined.
Yeah, but it certainly feel better about that. They also really like this JT Thor kid. They love this JT Thor kid. And I want to mention one more thing, then I want to get Ant's thoughts, then we'll wrap up here. But Steve had asked me about Max Strus yesterday. He was like, hey, it's worth having a conversation. Who starts when Strus comes back? And he's still a month away. Mm-hmm. So it's too early to have that conversation. But I just want to address this to everybody now. Because Kenny Atkinson said what he said against Golden State when I asked him, hey, why'd you stick with Isaac instead of Dean now that Dean's healthy? And he said, because it's working. I'm not going to. We could have arguments till we're blue in the face. Who should start? Who's the best fit? Strus, Wade, Okoro, LeVert, Jerome. Kenny's going to play who's playing best at that time. So, we could argue now, and let's say I'm making the case for Dean Wade. Mm-hmm. Well, if Dean Wade's shooting 20% from 3 when Max gets back, guess who ain't going to be starting? Dean Wade.
Fact.
And Isaac has been incredible in the starting lineup so far. Why? Because he's shooting 47% from 3 since entering the starting lineup. If Isaac all of a sudden goes back to shooting 30%, do you know what I think Kenny's going to do? Who's going to be shooting better? So, we could have this argument, and it's a fun conversation to have because you have Strus, who's the best shooter of the 3, probably the worst defender of the 3, but he gives you a little more playmaking. You got Dean Wade with the size. He doesn't need the ball whatsoever, and he's a better rebounder. Okoro is the best perimeter defender on the team. He's shooting shots right now, and they're using him as a screener in some really creative ways. Or you go 3 guards because Jerome can't make. You can make cases for all of them today, but those cases in a month when Strus comes back may look completely different. You know what I'm saying? It's going to come down to who's playing.
No, I think you're absolutely right because I turned to you Friday and I said, man, if Isaac is shooting like this,
he's got to start.
The Cavs can't be beat.
Yeah, he's got to start.
I looked up at one point and Tai Jerome and Isaac Okoro had 26 points combined The Warriors had 38 points.
You ain't losing. If those two score 26, you ain't losing.
You're not losing. Like you said, he's shooting 47% from three since entering the starting lineup. He's shooting 47% from the field overall from the season.
Yeah,
and like
they can't miss.
They can't miss.
It's incredible.
And it's crazy because in his system, even though he's 6'4", like he has the body of a two guard, right? But I think I told you this. He's more like a power forward type in Atkinson's system. And the only comparison I can draw, which is probably not a good one, was Charles Barkley.
Yeah, it's not a good comparison.
But he was an undersized power forward that can play defense. Now, clearly,
very different.
Offensively, very different. You're talking about a Hall of Famer, one of the 50 best players in NBA history of all time. But when you talk about that size comparison and what he does on the defensive side of the ball, the last time I seen an undersized player that was able to play the four like that at his size, it was Barkley.
It reminds me of DeJuan Blair, the big guy at Pitt a few years ago who had probably a 3-year, 4-year NBA career. Was never really a good pro, but was an incredible college player. But he was 6'4", 6'5".
Yeah.
Or Chuck Hayes. Remember, he was a big guy. He was like 6'6", 6'7". Isaac has more perimeter game than those guys ever did, but they're using him as a screener now in ways that we didn't see it all being used as a screener. Actually, I asked Isaac about that after the Golden State game, and he said, I've been a screener my whole life until I got to the pros. I did it in college. I did it in AAU. I hadn't done it my first 2 years, which, by the way, you're usually not setting screens with a two guard. So it's not like it's uncommon that he hadn't been used as a screener. But I think Atkinson realized we need your defense at times, but you're not providing traditional spacing unless he's shooting 47%, which he is right now. So, that's debunked. How can we utilize him offensively? Well, let's use him as the screener and make teams have to figure out because he's a pretty good passer out of those situations. So, it's been fun. We'll see. They got the Sixers in about 2 hours. No Embiid, no Maxey. They are facing Paul George. It'll be a good test defensively. See how they try and guard a bigger wing who's killed them in the past. Do you think they get to 13-0?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think Paul George is the absolute dominating force that he used to be.
Earl, 13-0?
Paul George ain't going to be enough, man. We got a balanced attack of mass destruction, and you never know who is going to be on any given night. Donovan had 36 last game. I'm going to bet my bottom dollar Donovan won't be the hot man tonight.
They haven't had a back-to-back leading scorer all season. So the numbers say it won't be Donovan. I agree. It won't be Donovan. I think Darius has another big night because their perimeter defense in terms of guards with Kyle Lowry, maybe not the greatest in the world anymore. We're on agreement they're going 13-0. I'm not shaving till they lose, by the way. I have officially confirmed this will stay till they lose, which means they're never going to lose. And that's a good thing for you, and for me. Except this is itchy. I want to shave it. But I won't. I'm holding out strong here, Earl.
Hey, man. Shout out to Tai Jerome. Go out there and kill him tonight, man. Let him know why you the MVP of the NBA. Let him know. Okay. It ain't Giannis. It ain't Joker. It ain't Spider. It's you. Tai Jerome.
We'll see y'all tomorrow on the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show.